Well, it's my privilege to share with you today from for family time. And today we're going to be looking at Psalm 27, which is a rather familiar psalm, but one that it's always good to look at again. Uh, the background of this psalm is it's one of David's, and you'll recall that David, of course, is famous for slaying Goliath. I think everybody knows that story. But we're told another time where David was nearly killed by another giant, 2 Samuel 21, 16, and 17. And in fact, he had to be rescued by Abishai. Now, after that happened, the advisors said, don't go to battle again. You're getting too old. This is too much for you. So this psalm was written by not a young man, but by a seasoned veteran man who knew what it was to be both in danger and to enjoy God's protection. Well, I'm going to read the first three verses of Psalm 27. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? When the wicked advance against me to devour me, it is my enemies and my foes who will stumble and fall. Though an army besiege me, my heart will not fear. Though war break out against me, even then I will be confident. Well, David shows great confidence here. He talks about light. The Lord is my light. And of course, light shows the way. And not just that, but it reveals hidden dangers. Now, we know that even, especially with children, they have a fear of the dark. And if we'll admit, we as adults, a lot of times have a fear of the dark as well. You know, we like to know what's in there. And David says that even though that's the case, even though darkness might be there, that he is confident that he'll be rescued from harm. And because of that, he says, whom shall I fear? He talks about the Lord being the stronghold of his life, a safe place out of the reach of the enemy. And because of that, he says, of whom shall I be afraid? Now, the second verse, he says, when the wicked advanced against me to devour me. Well, the wicked do attack. But instead of him falling, they were the ones who fell. And those surrounded by the enemies, God was with him, and God with him is greater than the enemies that gathered. And it's so with us as well. Now, the next few verses 4 through 10, please listen or follow along as I read. One thing I ask from the Lord, this only do I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze on the beauty of the Lord and to seek him in his temple. From the day of trouble, he will keep me safe in his dwelling. He will hide me in the shelter of his sacred tent and set me high upon a rock. Then my head will be exalted above the enemies who surround me. At his sacred tent, I will sacrifice with shouts of joy. I will sing and make music to the Lord. Hear my voice when I call, Lord. Be merciful to me and answer me. My heart says of you, seek his face. Your face, Lord, I will seek. Do not hide your face from me. Do not turn your servant away in anger. You have been my helper. Do not reject me or forsake me, God, my Savior. Though my father and mother forsake me, the Lord will receive me. Well, it seems like after showing this great confidence, he now shows some fear again. And we know what that's like. Even though one moment we feel like with the Lord, we can do anything, we can have other moments where we're a little afraid. We're a little scared about things. We're uncertain about the future. We're uncertain about how these circumstances are going to turn out. Just because we're Christians doesn't mean we don't feel things other people do. We feel fear. We feel anger. We feel sad sometimes. And David, despite God's past deliverance, still felt afraid and sought God one more time to deliver him. Well, he sought sanctuary with the Lord. He wanted a hiding place. Children, when they're small, they want everything. You ever take a child shopping? They want this, they want that, they want the other thing. Give me this, mama, give me that, daddy. But with maturity, we focus, we become aware that we don't need all those other things. And David, in his life, he wished for God's presence, not all the other things that he had as king, with an army and with the security of his palace and the walls around his city, but he wanted to know that God's presence was with him. That was what was most important to him. And through God's presence, we understand our life. We know where we belong when God is present with us. And that's what he's praying for in these passages. He says to the Lord, I want you to hide me in your tent, that no other place is going to be as safe for me as in the where I can be in the most intimate presence with you. I want to be hidden away sometimes where nobody can find me. Do you ever feel like that? Where it is that, you don't want to deal with people. You don't want to deal with circumstances. You want to just be away from it all. And he says, I want to be in that place with you where nobody else can find me. And then after that, in these verses that we just read, David is saying, once I have that communion with you, once I have that time of being hidden away with you, then I'm ready to face my enemies. Then I'm ready to go out and do what I need to do and fight the battle I need to fight. And he says, as a result of that, I'm going to offer to you the sacrifices of joy. Now, that's a wonderful thing. He says, it won't be a begrudging sacrifice. It won't be, I got to give this kind of thing. I wish I didn't have to. They're asking for money again. No, it is a joyful sacrifice that we give to the Lord. And we say, this is to thank you for what you have done. He knew that, that God's protection was going to be there again, even though other dangers might come up. And so he says that he was seeking God's face. God challenged him and David responded. God seemed to be distant at some point. And sometimes God feels distant to us. But even though God feels distant to us, it does not mean we are out of God's sight. He knows exactly where you are. He knows exactly the circumstance you're in. He knows exactly the needs that you have. Knows exactly what your fears are. He knows what's on your heart and what your concerns are. He knows what you love and what you hate. He knows all of that. And none of that is ever out of God's sight. And David even says, if my parents fail me, if even my parents fail me, God will still cherish me as his child. People will fail us, even the ones we love the most. They will fail us. But we need to know and need to be assured that we are always in God's care and he's looking out for us and he will cherish us as a mother cherishes a baby. Well, let's look at the last for 11 through 14. Teach me your way, Lord. Lead me in a straight path because of my oppressors. Do not turn me over to the desire of my foes, for false witnesses rise up against me, spouting malicious accusations. I remain confident of this. I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Wait for the Lord, be strong and take heart, and wait for the Lord. Well, even though David knew that God was going to make his path plain, it did not mean it was going to be a path that would be free from difficulty. We like to think that God's going to make a super highway for us, where everything's paved over and smooth and we can go, full speed ahead. But many times we find out that it's more like a rock strewn path that kind of goes along the edge and the precipice and so on. And that, there's little bumps and hills and valleys and stuff like that. Well, it's a plain path. It doesn't mean it's always an easy path. And yet God's goodness is still seen through it all. And that's what David is trying to say here. Now, in the last verse, he says to wait on the Lord. And that's a little hard for us to imagine in the day of instant. When I turn on my computer in the morning, I'm tapping my foot and I'm saying, please open up, because I'm used to things just opening right up. And when I have a meal for lunch, I run down, I put 3, 4, or 5 minutes in the microwave, boom, there's my meal, all lovely and cooked and so on. And we have been conditioned to this idea that everything is going to be right now, instant. And sometimes with our prayers, especially when we're asking for God's deliverance, when we're going through a difficult time, we want it to be right now, right this moment, right away. But David says, wait on the Lord. It's hard to wait for God to act or speak sometimes. It's hard for that. But we need to remember that when we wait for the Lord, it's not like he's telling us to go to sleep. He's not like he's telling us to sit on our hands. He's telling us that in the doing that we do, in the moving forward, that we must do what we can, and then God will do what only he can, and he will do it in the perfect time. There's so many times in my own life, I'm sure many of you can say the same thing, where I thought the Lord should have acted back then, but I realized when the Lord finally acted that, oh my goodness, if I'd had what I wanted, it would have messed things up terribly. But waiting on the Lord, that's what I needed to do. We need to trust God's timing. And remember, God's timing is perfect. He's never early. He's never late. He's always on time. And as we look at our closing song here, we look at this idea of waiting and trusting God. It's a beautiful song, and listen to it. And if you want to sing along, the words will be there for you to do so. God bless you.